There we go. All right, thanks everyone for being here. I'm so happy to see so many of you here. And I'm really excited for today's event we have here in the community. We're digging into datasets, one of the newest features that was added to HubSpot as part of Operations Hub Enterprise. If you don't know me, I'm Jan, and I'm managing the RevOps and operations community. And we're constantly basically holding events like these where we, either dig into the methodology of revenue operations, or we dig into the product operations hub specifically, like we're doing today. If you want to stay up to date on all the types of events and resources that we're doing, feel free to head over to this community here. It's a RevOps and operations community. And as you'll see, next week, we'll have another event like this where we dig into Snowflake data share, the second core feature that was launched last week as part of Operations Hub Enterprise. But today we're focusing on datasets. This is a new tool that lets you curate your raw HubSpot customer data into reusable tables so you can empower your downstream teams to quickly and easily do their own reporting. And that's, of course, is a very shallow explanation. We'll dive a little bit deeper today. And to do that, I've invited these two amazing folks here, Ari Plout, who's a principal product marketer behind Operations Hub, and Stephen McMillian, who's the product manager of Datasets. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Before we get started, I wanted to do some quick light housekeeping. With quite a few here today, so please keep your mics muted until we've reached the Q&A. If you have, of course, any questions for us in between, you can always use the chat button. This event is being recorded, so if you want to rewatch it later on or share the recording with your colleagues, you'll be able to find this community post tomorrow on the community by the same time. On this community post, I'll share it here in the chat as well. Yeah, so same time tomorrow, you'll find the recording. So I think that's everything for me. I'll hand it over to Ari to dig a little bit deeper on the narrative behind datasets.
Cool. Thank you, Jan. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. One thing I'll say as I'm doing that is this is not a webinar. It's meant to be like a interactive kind of a show and tell. So feel free to like unmute, turn on your camera if you want, throw questions in the chat pane. We're going to talk for like 15 minutes maybe, but after that, it's all questions and it's just interactions. We can go through your individual use cases. We can go into different portals. Like you let us know what's the most helpful and we're happy to do it. But that said, kicking us off here, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if we can do this. Can everyone see my screen? Let's get a thumbs up. Oh, thanks guys. Turning on the camera. Love it. Cool. So I'm going to give you the quick rundown. I'm going to pass it to Stephen, who's going to give you the demo inside the portal. And I wanted to start this with a bit of a personal story. So I work at HubSpot as a product marketer for Operations Hub. A big part of my job is reporting on demand and trial growth and all that kind of thing. And so naturally, I go into HubSpot to do that reporting. We use our own HubSpot system. Our portal is portal 53. That's our Hub ID. So I went into my own portal to try to do that, thinking that it would be pretty straightforward. And pretty quickly, I actually got super overwhelmed. So this is the reporting screen in 53. You see over on the left-hand side where I go to choose my properties to report on. We've got 812 properties, and that's just contact properties in our own HubSpot portal. That's crazy. And that's like in addition to deal and company properties and all the rest. So we've got a ton of properties. I think like 40 or 50% of them are unused. To add to that, the names are super confusing. You see things like do not use, RPG only. These are like naming conventions that some team has given that means something to someone, but not to me. And then to top it all off, even with these 812 properties, we're actually missing some context along the way. So one example there is I like need to report on ARR, annually recurring revenue, for my product lines. We tend to just have MRR inside of 53. And so that missing context of the additional calculation, even with all the properties that exist, is missing from my experience. So I walk away emoji face, thinking emoji face, confused and kind of overwhelmed in 53 trying to run that report. So my next recourse, I guess just to summarize on that, 812 properties, we've got confusing names, we've got some missing context. My next recourse is to go into Looker. We use Looker as well. I love Looker, but if I'm being completely honest, I was just as quickly overwhelmed in Looker, because not only do we have those 812 properties from HubSpot in there, we also have all the properties from all our other systems in our BI tool, and I didn't even know where to start, right? So my solution was to call in my ops team. I love my ops team. They're superheroes. But the thing is, like, it took them a little while and it wasn't that helpful, right? So it took us 3 days. We ended up with a long Slack thread. I ended up getting this Slack message where my ops team said, I put together a brief and a 16-minute loom around the language of trials and what it all looks like today, right? So I'd wasted time, I'd wasted energy, I'd wasted effort. If I'm being honest, if I wanted to run this report again, I'd probably just try to figure it out myself, or like maybe I wouldn't, and I would just skip running the report because it's really hard to get through, right? So my goal here is not to throw our own ops team under the bus. I actually think we have the best ops team in the whole world at HubSpot. My point is to surface the broader problem that I think Operations Hub Enterprise solves, which is that data leaders tend to spend their time on reactive fires, and the rest of the company is not empowered to do self-service reporting. So people like me aren't empowered to do self-service reporting, and so we rely on ops teams who are really like underwater with these one-off requests, right? So nobody wins in this world. Summarizing here, ops teams are reactive and underwater. They lose control and trust. They experience crazy inefficiencies. I end up standing in line. I end up guessing again, nobody wins. And the goal here is we envision a better way to do this, where ops people are fuel. They're not firefighting. They're efficient. They're in control. They're curating an experience for everyone else. And people like me, the marketer, are empowered. We're not waiting in line. We're savvy. We have consistent reporting, and we have really fast insights and access to data. So with all this in mind, we've launched 3 really great features as a part of Operations Hub that are aimed at bringing us towards this world, right? These features take reactive work off of the ops team's plate, integrations work, data quality work, business process work, and it frees them up for bigger, bolder, more strategic, better things. And those features that we've launched so far are all about collecting and connecting and cleaning data. But the question then is, how do you turn that data into insight and into perspective and into action, right? And as my example showed in my own experience in 53 in our own HubSpot portal, even once the data is in one place, even once it's all collected, it doesn't really do you any good unless it's curated in a way that enables easy reporting for everybody at the company. And so that's why we're really excited to introduce Operations Hub Enterprise. We launched it last week. The idea is that it enables data leaders to curate reusable tables, collections of data for across their company in order to run better reporting for everybody at the company. So to kind of get rid of this walled garden in the ops team and the data leaders where they're the only ones that can run reports, let everybody run reports, and the ops team is the one that's enabling data for the rest of the company. The highlight here is Datasets. That's the feature Stephen worked on. He'll show you in just a second. The kind of before and after here in my own experience on the previous walkthrough in our own HubSpot portal is before I had all the properties, there were confusing names. The context was missing, right? I didn't have that ARR calculation. The after is my ops team at HubSpot could curate that. So I just had the fields that I needed. I think there are 3 or 4 fields now. They've got super clear names, so we can rename the fields to whatever makes sense to the downstream stakeholder like me. And we've got full context, including calculations, which is a huge deal. For the first time, you can run a calculation in the context of a report in HubSpot and not have to worry about hitting calculated property limits in CRM and that kind of thing. So another way to look at this, before a business user would look to build a report, they'd face this intimidating wall of raw data, their whole CRM in one screen. Now you take that raw data, you can curate it into a data set, and that's the entry point to create a report for anybody at the company. So really powerful, really cool, and Stephen will show you in a sec. I do want to mention the other feature in Operations Hub Enterprise, which is if you don't want to do your data curation inside of HubSpot, you actually want to do it in your existing data stack. Forget the coming soon here. It's already out and available. If you have a data stack you like, you're using Snowflake, which is a leading data platform, data warehouse, we have now a fast, automated, secure integration, HubSpot built, HubSpot supported, to get your HubSpot data into Snowflake. A lot of benefits here. All of your data, it's fast, it's optimized. All the schemas are optimized for actual reporting, really reliable, and it's really easy to set up. So a lot of benefits here. Often our customers will use ETL tools or kind of data connectors that will require an extra cost, extra time, and a lot of engineering bandwidth. This Snowflake data share is super sweet, super easy, super fast. So check that out if you use Snowflake or you have clients who use Snowflake, anything like that. It's worth a look. Last piece here, quickly on pricing and packaging. The free and starter tiers of Operations Hub are rooted in connecting data. We've got Data Sync is our brand new integration engine. We've got over 80 new HubSpot built integrations as a part of free and starter with Microsoft Dynamics, with Google Contacts, and a whole lot more. That's the free and starter tiers. The professional tier is rooted in automation, cleaning up data, enhancing business processes. You can now write code in your HubSpot workflows. You can write JavaScript in your workflows, which is super powerful. The enterprise tier is where this reporting stuff comes in. So Datasets, the feature you're about to see, and Snowflake Data Share are both a part of enterprise, which we launched last week. Quickly here, because the most important stuff is the actual product. You can buy enterprise for $2,000 a month, or you can buy it as a part of our CRM suite. CRM suite is where you get all the products packaged together: marketing, sales, service, CMS, operations, at a discounted rate. Altogether, you can get it at the enterprise tier, at the pro tier, at the starter tier, altogether. Two more quick things that I'll just plug here that are part of Operations Hub and super cool, that are actually coming soon. You guys are the first to know. One is Deal Sync. We launched this data sync engine that I had talked about just a second ago, 80 new integrations. It now syncs deals. So before it just syncs companies and contact data. Now it syncs deal data too, which enables really amazing things if you're trying to connect HubSpot to Dynamics or Pipedrive or Zoho or any other CRM. You want to get that deal data back into HubSpot. Check that out. Data sync is free. It's in your HubSpot account already, so you should check it out. The other thing is scheduled triggers. This is something we're actually looking for beta users on. So if you're interested, throw it in the chat or email me. I'm ari@hubspot.com. Scheduled triggers, the idea is in a HubSpot workflow, you can now, and you can kind of see it in the screenshot here, have a recurring trigger that sets off automation on a recurring basis. So for example, if every Monday you wanted to send a reminder to your team or assign a task to a sales rep, maybe every month you wanted to, send health scores to your CSMs to highlight like their, accounts that they might want to check in on that month. Those kinds of recurring triggers that you schedule on a regular basis have never been possible in automation in HubSpot. Now they are. So if you're interested in that, put it in the chat or reach me, ari@hubspot.com. Would love to get you involved there. And that's actually it. So demo time. Stephen, I'm going to pass it to you. Keep the questions coming, guys, in the chat. We'll get to them as we go. We'll get to them at the end. And we can talk through use cases later as well. But I'm going to stop sharing, Stephen, and I'll pass it to you.
Cool. Thanks, Ari. Thanks for always doing a better job at framing everything than I can. I always appreciate that.
That is incredibly not true, and you're about to prove it to all the people live.
My truth. Hello, my name is Stephen. I'm PM of Datasets. So yeah, just kind of like jump in the tool. I don't have a super prescriptive script going on here. So I'm really going to walk you guys through the process of creating a data set, what the tool looks like. Please drop things into the chat as I go, and I'll also stop the questions. Cool. So when you're in Getting for Datasets, you'll find it in the drop-down menu under Reports. And go to Datasets, and it's very key to understand, most of what you're going to see through this entire flow, and then I'll go back and go through a different flow for a marketer, is really for your ops person or whoever is the most data literate person in your company to set up your data environment for everyone to have ease of use. So from this point, this is really where your ops person is going to be working out of. They can see the previous data sets they've been working on or saved, or they can just come and create a new one. So from the creation step, you're brought to a join step that looks a lot like the customer report builder does today. Here, the things we've changed is added a preview screen at the bottom. to really show you like what the tables you selected look like and kind of like a limited query of what you're joining. So if I have contacts and I want to join to deals, this will automatically update and show you the first few like queries of different deals with contacts, and it gives you like a quick brief of the table relationship. What we want to achieve here is to like make it very clear and kind of in a visual way, show what's happening in our join. That means that if you're joining contacts as a primary data source and deals as a secondary data source, the contact property table is the left side of join, the deals table is the right side of join. What you're seeing here is like every contact, and then if they're connected to a join. This is very different than if you were to go to deals, it's a primary data source, and then select contacts, the secondary data source. Here we're only seeing every deal with the joined contact. I think people that are very like confident with data know these more intuitively, but I think it's really important for people to see it here, see your data as you're preparing it, give you more confidence in your entire process, and the fact that you're getting like the right content as you go. You can connect multiple different things together, but for this demonstration, I'm really just going to use contacts and deals because my portal only has that data. Before I move on to the next step, any questions just on this page?
I have a quick question. Can you use like custom objects on here as well?
Yep, you can. They'll show up kind of like under, they populate under service as custom objects, and then whatever you named it as. My portal just doesn't have custom objects. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Keep moving. Second step, prepare. Here, you're really getting down to that curation and kind of like cultivation of data that Ari talked about in his like framing. This means like going from that long list of useless properties, it's like 800 properties long in HubSpot, to maybe the core 20 that you need to use for a specific analysis. So the idea here is for you to be kind of like opinionated. This is a data set that I'm going to build for a sales org. So I'm going to actually build it as if like there's a salesperson looking at this, as opposed to sales marketing service. So here I put deals the primary, table join, and contact the secondary, and I'll start adding properties that I know they care about. So this might be deal name. Just need to type it in, drag.
Stephen?
Shows up. Is there a question?
It's not a question. It's for the older people in this session. Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, I think I can.
Good question. Good call out.
Is this better enough? Better enough.
It's great. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Okay. So basically all I did there, I'll repeat the step just in case you didn't see it. Deal name, you type it into the search box that's in the top left, and all you do is drag the property. You'll immediately see this zoomed out at the bottom of the preview pane, where you see all of the different deals in my portal being populated. So I kind of know what's happening as I'm curating this data set, as well as like a property preview source here. This is a little bit works in progress. It could be improved. So like sometimes it's a super actual data. Sometimes it's really just like the best guess what we think people care about in this preview screen. Next, I'm just going to drag a couple of properties in. So zoom in for you. Think about deal owner. Let's go with owner assign date, close date, pipeline, so basically as I'm building this, like these are the only properties, these 5 options that my sales team would see if they went to a report that is being built off this data set. In the preview tab here, I can kind of get a rough like visualization of what I'm including. Here you see the different deal names, who the deal owner is, the owner assign date, and the close date of the deal, along with the sales pipeline. In my portal, I have 2 pipelines, sales pipeline, school pipeline. If I want to be more prescriptive and create a data set only for my sales team, I can like flip between these 2 tabs, filters, prepare, and really be flexible in how I'm curating this data. So I want a pipeline just for my sales team. I'm going to apply a filter, This should look familiar if you're familiar with the customer report builder, but basically like everything here in the filtering screen currently has parity with that building experience. So is any of in the deals pipeline? And then I'm just marking a checkbox, sales pipeline. Apply, and the preview applies and it builds with me. I'm gonna go back to the prepare step because really this is just like for me. Like I want to apply a filter before I keep going, just so I'm only focusing on the things that I care about. Now we can think about like what else is not here to be really instructional. A lot of the ways people often think about their sales process, like what's the velocity that deal is open versus the close date. In HubSpot, we have pre-made properties for time to close, but it uses different properties than the owner assigned date. And so I'm just going to show you guys like how to create a field that flexibly uses like 2 dates and like shows you the difference between them, so you can understand kind of like what's the time to close of your pipeline, the way that your company actually thinks about it. So create a new field. This is net new. It's something we introduced with Datasets. I'm going to call it sales velocity, and then I'm going to use a formula. This bar is like super flexible. I can't get to everything here, but you can do anything from add a constant. It'll populate into the field. I can do free-flowing math here. Or I can do something like a function. So I'll show a couple of use cases to how you would use this formula bar, and I'm happy to take questions about that as well. But for now, using a date diff. A date diff just like basically shows you 2 different dates, takes the difference between them, and then spits out like a numerical like outcome between those 2 dates. So here it's saying, like it's just giving you basically guidance on what this formula does, some examples of different ways you could use it with either a property or a manual input. But I'm just going to go in here, date part. Do I want the month, week, or day? Let's say the day. Second part of the argument's asking for what is the first date here? Let's use, this is a close date. So I'm going to insert, create a field, close date. Second date I'm going to put in here is, click, the assign date. This pops out the sales velocity of each one of these deals in live on the preview. This is not saved anywhere in the CRM. This is like strictly for reporting purposes. So the purpose and the value of that is it doesn't muddy up your CRM. This sales velocity is only being used for reporting purposes, and anyone who uses this dataset can use this property for reporting, but it doesn't have to be saved on a deal record. And it's essentially getting around the kind of hack people do, which is creating properties that are only being used for reporting, but actually don't need to persist in your system. Let's see. Another thing that like you can do in datasets is actually just like recontextualize data that already exists. What I mean by that is if we want to know the deal amount, dragged in deal amount, but like most companies, most people don't just like talk about their deal amount as this like amount. It's usually the monthly recurring revenue, whatever, however your company actually thinks about this, you can call it that. So MRR, or let's go with monthly recurring revenue. And now you can see that it's being called this in the preview state, and it's called, this is just your deal amount, that's monthly recurring. If you want to know your annual recurring revenue, we can like utilize a formula field. ARR is just the MRR times 12. And now we have ARR. Any, I have a few more formula field kind of suggestions of how you could use it. Any questions of anything I've already done though?
While people are thinking about it, Stephen, one of the things it's come up like as I've been thinking about it and as I've shown it to more people, it just kind of reminds me of Excel. Like when you type in a function and it gives you the kind of like the inputs that you fill in. We've got a lot of the same functions. It's concatenating and it's date diffs and it's that kind of thing. I think it can replace a lot of things where you need to export from HubSpot in order to run those reports. So that
Oh,
just
yeah.
I've
keeps
actually
the
got a
product
quick
moving.
question there, Ari.
Yeah, go for it.
As far as these custom calculations and the syntax kind of version of a calculation, will this ever be available when creating a custom field on the background to be able to use the syntax? I know that there's just the simplified version when you're creating a custom field where it's just simple mathematics, but will the syntax ever be available within that custom field?
You're talking about the calculated properties in the CRM,
Yep.
right?
Yep, exactly.
Good question. I've talked to that team.
It just
about
seems like this is great as far as like within a data set, but it'd also be great to be able to actually create fields that have syntax around it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that team agrees in terms of like when that'll be delivered or if that'll be delivered in the same exact way. I'm not sure, but that team is thinking about how to make that process more flexible compared to the relatively rigid process that currently exists. That's all I know now. And that's not me being cryptic. I just know that they're thinking about how they can get a similar experience, more flexibly allowing people with more technical understanding to really kind of go crazy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. One thing I want to call here, I just thought this right now. Let's see. It's worth mentioning that like there's a lot of flexibility and power we're giving you guys here. There's a really comprehensive knowledge base article that goes through syntax, different ways you would join things, all the things that kind of like help answer questions as you go along. It's documented pretty clearly. Just like probably the most technical like example of a knowledge base article HubSpot's ever done. So this is like a living, breathing document that like we've developed along with our dev team and the knowledge and the person who writes the article to really be a little bit more technical, even if we're trying to make it accessible to people that are creating. We do want this to like give people the power to like explore the flexibility that's really possible here.
Stephen, we've got a question from Jem to drop that in the chat. Do you mind just taking that and dropping it in the chat?
Totally. Oh, using chat while sharing is impossible. Okay.
Zoom chat is like eternal, like what happens to a Zoom chat after the Zoom? I just have no idea.
It's gone. Absolutely gone.
It's gone. It's like if you want to like tell your darkest secrets, you drop in Zoom chat and then it's like a Snapchat. They disappear forever.
Besides that tangent, let's see. The other thing I was going to show you guys.
You can save chat, Taylor says. So nobody's spilling any dark secrets. Taylor saves the day. Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
No worries. I want to show you guys how you can do something more of like a business type function here. So like thinking about customer acquisition costs, this is something that's like usually requires what we call aggregate math. There are limitations to like what calculations you can make in the reporting data set, but I just want to show how you can get like a customer acquisition cost by thinking about like, if you know your cost per lead. So if your cost per lead on a campaign is being spit out by our campaign tool, like if you go to our campaign tool, they'll tell you what your cost per lead is. So we know that in this campaign, our cost per lead is about $50 per customer. You can like derive a customer acquisition cost by taking your constant that you've derived here. Customer. I have so much anxiety about spelling things on Zoom's acquisition cost. And saying, we want to know what the, let's see, so customer acquisition cost starts here. Cost per lead plus how much we're paying sales reps, which might be your deal amount. Whoa, hard when you're zoomed in. Your deal amount times whatever the commission you're paying to a sales rep. That might be 0.1. And now you're looking at every single deal and you're seeing like, this is what the cost of customer acquisition was for this deal, stamped on each deal. Finally, I'm just going to kind of take you guys to where this all concludes, which is, move my Zoom controls. Sales data set. Next, filters. I can filter anything more if I want to. Look at the review section, which gives you a little more like granularity into what we've done here. Shows you the kind of data type, if it's derived only for data sets and reporting, what we did here. Save. Cool. So sales data set webinar. Now I remember just the top of the demo. Like if you were a marketing person, the way you would actually interact with that data set has nothing to do with anything that you're seeing. Like a marketing person is going to go into reports drop down, they're going to build a report. And from the customer report builder, instead of starting at this process that looks quite dissimilar, they would go to datasets, sales dataset webinar, and they would start building with like, was a dramatically reduced property selection. There's a lot less decision fatigue. You know exactly what everything is because it's contextualized the way you talk about your company, monthly recurring revenue, ARR. You could change deal owner to account executive if that is how you guys speak about your data, and they can go straight into building reports. And that is the end of the demo. Happy to go back, recap anything, or answer specific questions, but thanks for paying attention. Any questions?
This is a weird question, but like, is it possible to use 2 different data sets in a report, or do you have to essentially build a third data set that like combines all that stuff?
The idea is that you have to build a data set that the third data set would just be a net new data set. It wouldn't be combining to join. You just build a third data set essentially, or make one that does the use case for all 3.
Okay, cool.
What's the use case behind that? Is it Gani or Gani? I don't know.
Gani.
Gani. What's the use? Like, what can you give us like the question behind that question? I'm curious.
To be honest, it's one of those things where like, whenever I do like reporting, there are times when like, you combine and essentially build your own data set in like Excel. But then you realize, oh, the relationships I just built here, if I combined it with another data set that I built somewhere else, I might get kind of the information I'm looking for, or like, how do I combine these 2 things? I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but
All good.
But yeah.
Yeah. The 2 options there would be to build another data set that's more encompassing than like end goal, or to just go into the customer report builder and build the report without using a data set because it's some ad hoc analysis that you want to get pretty quickly. Like either one of those 2 things would work. I think the benefit of the first is that it's reusable. It'll make the time to insight shorter next time around. Benefit of option 2 is that you don't have to like build a data set, clog your system up, or go through like laborious process to get one insight if that's all you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. It's like almost a follow-up question, but like, is there a limit to the number of data sets you can have?
Yeah, there is. All right, is it 50? Is that right?
I think that sounds right. Let me double check while we're talking. But
Yeah.
I think 50 is right.
I think it's 50.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I'd love to hear not only questions, but like thoughts that you had while I went through that demo, like things that you think were like, oh, at this step, we were so close to like building something that was perfect, but it wasn't quite there. Like any thoughts like that, totally welcome, but also welcome for questions.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Bluetooth took a second to kick back in. Good morning. So number 1, this was so right on time because I actually am doing a Snowflake project with a client where one of the things that I think is going to be really interesting that we're doing is they run sort of a dual, like, please don't cringe, everybody, take a deep breath, walk down this journey with me. They're running a dual stack where we have a segment, they're pulling their prospects into HubSpot so that we can run ads and build and do all of those things there, but then they live in another system when they're actually engaging. So we have sort of a 3-part close process. There's your conversion from actually just existing in this world to be entering their prospective pipeline. There's 3 or 4 different ways within which you can come in to be eligible to be a customer through an app engagement. Then there's an actual customer true store conversion process where now you're actually profitable to the company. And those happen in 2 separate systems with a third transactional system that actually then spits out what happens within your path within the company to receipts, et cetera. So like I said, y'all take a deep breath. That's a whole lot. And so I know you're surprised as to why we're looking at Snowflake to help them, really streamline their data and understand this consumer process. And so one of the things that I'm looking at here within HubSpot, and as I'm kind of picking up on Ganny's question, I have not just 3 separate data sets, but I'm pulling files from one stack into another, and my HubSpot into Snowflake, and then spitting them back out. And they are also looking at putting one of those ETL or reverse ETLs into their mix to kind of help better manage their data. Within this crazy Frankenstack of a system, one of the biggest concerns that I have is I love what HubSpot does for them in terms of converting their prospects, and that data does not compute with their other systems. So when Ganny talked about, well, I'm trying to take 2 separate data sets, and not only am I trying to bring 2 separate data sets, but I'm bringing 2 separate data sets that don't necessarily match. Can you give me a little guidance on how we can sort of help our teams better manage that through?
Yeah. So
Can I ask?
I'm gonna
Feel free to drink some bourbon off camera if you need to, as you think through that.
Can
All
I
right,
ask
I'll
a
let you
question?
ask the question first. I
Oh,
also
yeah.
want to recap the question, just make sure we're clear on the question.
I think we're maybe doing similar things, but Amy, can you just what's your ultimate goal? Like what outcome do you want to achieve from the work that you're doing now?
Their ultimate goal is absolutely just end-to-end visibility. So we want to know from what advertising outreach is most effective. They want to know what email is most effective, both in terms of converting you from that prospect into app adopter. But then once you're now app adopter in our secondary system, what's actually driving you to engage and use and become someone who is putting revenue into that company? And so that's where the data from the data that sets that we can use and the reporting that we can build here needs to speak in 2 systems. And the common language between them is actually this sort of Snowflake integration. So we're working with it on the one system, and then literally I got the email about this session today.
What's the other system? It's HubSpot and what?
I mean, is it nice to say on a HubSpot call, we are team HubSpot right now, but it's
That's fair
Eloqua.
enough. That's fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. Stephen, did you want to follow up on that, or were you just trying to recap?
Yeah, you did very well. Yeah, so it sounds like you're taking some upsource lead generation system, call it LinkedIn, getting customers into HubSpot, getting more information about their marketing activities, and then you're using Snowflake as your end source of truth for data analytics. Is that fair?
That's fair. They've got some other tools mixed in there as well, just as you guys have Looker, they've got some other things, but basically yes. Okay.
And the end goal basically is it to simplify the process or to make HubSpot data easier to work with another system?
I would say both. From our perspective, we absolutely need to simplify, because exactly what you just described in terms of being able to see for the different teams, they have 7 different divisions and 8 different product lines, and everyone needs a slightly different slice. And they're doing exactly what you're talking about, where we're adding just this one feature, be it a CDO in Eloqua or a tag in HubSpot, that is constantly having to be translated between the 2. And it's just not efficient. And it doesn't build good business practices either, because it obfuscates the data.
Yeah, I think when I hear that whole kind of data stack, and it's not there's a lot of Frankenstein data stacks. HubSpot solution is being flexible with the way you can import data, either through a custom object or a custom behavioral event, which allows you to get a lot of your marketing and sales and some of those front office stuff into HubSpot flexibly. I assume that you'll still run into some kind of roadblock on the way out for the real robust data aggregations, just general transformation type work, which is why you would still use Snowflake. But I think that using different custom objects, the customer behavioral events, getting that data set clean as much as possible in HubSpot through datasets will allow you to kind of still get a really clear picture to webhook out, API, whatever, to a different system like Snowflake. If you're actually using Snowflake, you probably could use data share to help make that integration quite easy through some kind of batch process. But when I think about the problems that you're losing there, I think you could simplify a lot of it just to using some of the custom objects or event type things in HubSpot, and then using something like data share to get it into your system, which at least simplifies a lot of the top of the funnel. Is that like, was that too simplified there, or like, does that sound right?
It's the first step that you've really outlined for our teams, where you're affirming our belief that we could pull them together within the two. So that helps a lot. By the way, all of that crashing was not me, just so you know. That was everyone in the background, because only when I get on a call with HubSpot is the whole house going to crash down. But thank you. That was awesome. And that's exactly what we needed to know.
Yeah, also happy to talk more after this, like some kind of call. I'd love to get into specifics of like what you're doing. It's like high level on a call, hard to understand, but I'd love to like know specifically kind of like how we can solve better.
Absolutely. Are you Stephen at HubSpot?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Perfect.
Cool. Any other questions, y'all? Cool. Well, I think that's a sufficient amount of awkward silence, but if anyone has a question, do chime in or just email me directly or Ari. Jan, I'll let you do your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for being here and asking all these interesting questions. Thanks Stephen and Ari as well for laying the land and explaining everything here. That I think it was a wonderful demo as well, Stephen. You really went in depth. You showed things that I honestly didn't even know about data sets yet. So that was pretty great to see. But yeah, we have another session next week. It's not really a deep dive. It's more like a live Q&A on Snowflake data share. So if you want to attend that, if you're using Snowflake, of course, feel free to go to this. I'm just copy pasting it here. This event, you'll find it in the chat. It's also might be interesting. If not, I'm really thankful that you were all here. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm going to have my dinner. As you can see, it's pretty dark outside. So I see you all in the community for next week. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, team. Thank you, Jan.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.